Okay, hello. This is 10.5 vocabulary. You will find the vocabulary's words written out on pages 468 in your textbook. It would be good to have that out so you can record the definitions. But again, using Geometry Sketchpad, I think I can illustrate a little bit more in depth than what the textbook can do. We're going to be looking at angles. And this, so just quickly, vocabulary. Angles, we're going to name angles and how they relate to circles based on where their vertex is. So we can see here, we're going to look at 4 different types of angles. Angles that have their vertex at the center, angles that have their vertex inside the circle, angles that have their vertex on the circle, angles that have their vertex outside the circle. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the first group, which we're very familiar with. That is the central angle. A central angle has its vertex at the center of the circle. We call it a central angle. And you know something about those angles and their arcs and all of that. So, central angle. Okay, angles at the center. Next, we're going to look at angles that have their vertex inside the circle. So here's an example where we have, this is what we call a chord angles. They are constructed by chords. And you can see here that they create their vertex, vertical angles, vertex, but it's inside. Chords are always going to have vertexes inside the circle. Okay? Now, if I'm looking at this special case where the chords are diameters, why then we've got a central angle. But otherwise, the vertex is simply inside. In lesson 10.5, we are going to be looking at, we're going to be solving problems being able to find these angles depending on the arcs. Okay? So that's vertices inside the circle, but not at the center. We call those chord angles. Number 4, angles with vertices on the circle. So, first one we'll look at is a tangent chord angle. This, you can see here that this is tangent. That ray is tangent, and the vertex, and it has a, it's meeting with a chord. Hence the name tangent chord angle. Okay, so we've got relationships here. And then we'll talk about the inscribed angle. We've already mentioned this term, so this should be somewhat familiar with you. This is called an inscribed angle. Notice that it is its vertex is on the circle, and then it's created by just 2 chords. Okay, so this is inscribed. Could be a diameter, that's fine. The vertex is always on the circle. Okay? So looking at both of those together, this is the 2 different types of angles that we'll talk about. One is inscribed, the other is tangent chord. Okay? And finally, angles with vertices outside the circle. Let's look at the first one, secant. You can see here that I've got 2 secants. This is a secant segment joined with another secant segment, and its vertex is outside the circle. Hence the name secant angle. Okay? You can see how this angle can look. Okay? Looking at that. I can drag this around. Okay, that's always a secant. Secant tangent. Can you imagine what that might look like? It's going to look like this, where one ray of the angle is a secant, or I'm sorry, is a tangent. So this is always tangent, and the other one is a secant. So this is a tangent secant. You can see here what that angle can look like. Again, in section 10.5, we're going to be looking at how arc measures, how arc measures relate here to angle measures. All right, so you can expect that to be some of the skills that we learn. And then finally, tangent angle, and we've seen this picture before. Okay, this is a tangent, but now we're interested in the measure of the angle at the vertex outside the circle. We're looking at that angle measure. As it relates to the arcs, that it intercepts. Okay, those two arcs there. Okay, you can see the angle measure changes depending on the arcs that they intercept. So, to recap that, that is tangent, tangent. We looked at secant, tangent, secant, secant, okay, for vertices outside the circle. So again, you'll find these definitions on page 468. Be sure to write them in your green booklets with pictures. Important to have pictures here. Lots of terminology in this chapter. Okay, with that, I will sign off.